Hi, everyone. I'm Kyler from the Content Mix, and I'm excited to be here with Stuart Cording, technical marketing consultant at Cording Consulting. And yes, Cording Consulting. You've heard that right. Stuart is a technical marketing expert who decided to take a leap of faith and start his own consulting company to help marketers implement technical marketing strategies for deep tech clients. Based in Germany, Stuart's career has always centered around tech. An engineer at heart, Stewart got involved in marketing for tech companies towards the beginning of his career when he became a marketing engineer at National Semiconductor. Over 2 decades later, Stewart now dedicates his career to helping others successfully connect with technical decision makers. And I couldn't be more excited to pick his brain on today's episode. And what's more, he's also a freelance journalist. So I'm sure he'll have some great insight on content marketing. So I just want to get the interview started. And by thanking Stewart for coming, thank you so much for joining us on today's episode.
Hi, Kyler. Thanks for inviting me. I'm really excited about
No, it's our
participating today.
pleasure. Our pleasure. Now, I just gave you a really nice introduction based on my research and our discussions beforehand, but I kind of want you to introduce yourself in your own words. So, can you just tell us a bit more about where you're from and what's your connection to content marketing in Europe?
So I was born in the UK and grew up there and studied at university there. And I'd always had an interest in electronics. I was completely mad about electronics and programming as a kid. I'm of an age where I grew up with the Commodore 64 as a home computer, sitting there programming in my spare time, everything possible, and learning as much as I could about programming. And I always knew I was going to be in this industry somewhere, but I at the time I didn't really understand what that meant as an industry. But it was definitely going to be in electronics somewhere. And as I was studying at university, the third year of the studies, you had to take part in a year's placement as part of that degree. So
Mhm.
I managed to get a placement in Germany, just outside Munich, with a company called National Semiconductor, which has now become Texas Instruments.
Oh, wow.
And I spent a year there working in the lab, developing chips, basically, or semiconductors and microcontrollers with a fantastic team there. And as I finished my degree, they were willing to have me back again. And that was the break into living in Germany. And I've now been in Germany for 20 years. Since then, I've moved my way around the semiconductor industry. I've worked for a good 5 or 6 semiconductor vendors. I've worked for tools vendors, and then I started working for a global, but a small global niche electronics marketing agency, technical marketing agency, a couple of years ago, and that wasn't really doing it for me from a career point of view. So that's why I decided to become self-employed back in June of last year.
That's amazing. Now, I got really excited preparing this interview because it's kind of some parallels in our career journeys. Because I was like doing the product before. So I used to work as a content creator, translator, and then I kind of moved to the sales and marketing side of it. And it's kind of cool. That's the same thing. Your interest in engineering is what led you to market for engineering engineers and like that type of product. So I guess your transition into marketing was kind of organic or just kind of happened, no, for you?
Yeah, I think it was organic. I think it was always going to happen at some point. So I guess my first opportunity to sort of flex my content creation muscles was when I was working at National Semiconductor. I'd started as an application engineer or a field application engineer, which meant I was sort of out in the field. I was helping customers and giving them support when they were integrating our products into the applications they were building. And then our Marcom leader came to me one day and she said to me, we are writing an article for a magazine, or we promised an article for a magazine. It's about flash memory on microcontrollers. And at that time, flash on microcontrollers was was a thing. It wasn't well known about, but I think there was still some growing processes and understanding what that technology meant and how to use it. And she asked me if I could write about it. So I sat down and did the research, and I think that was something that came out of being at university. I was quite happy to sort of dig into things and get into depth and find out all the nuts and bolts. And I think my feeling's always been that as long as you know a tiny little bit more than everybody else, you're on the right wavelength, sort of thing. So you just need
Exactly.
to get yourself a little bit more, and then you explain everything to the just underneath the level of your ability. So I put this piece together, and she really liked it. We had a Marcom agency that was working with us, and they really liked it. They placed it with some magazines, and that sort of started this whole content creation process at National Semiconductor. And I think I must have written about 20 articles. I think they counted every article placement, so it was probably 5 articles, but they got translated into lots of languages. And so I've
Okay.
collected all the magazines, and I've got it in sort of Swedish and Norwegian and
So
French
cool.
and German and all that sort of stuff. And that carried on, and I sort of, it didn't matter where I went, I was always getting in touch with the marketing team and say, oh, can I write this? Can I add something to the blog? There's this project I found using our company's products. Can I write about that? And that sort of snowballed.
Yeah, that's so cool. And when I was preparing for this interview, I was just really like intrigued because I feel like marketing for engineers and that kind of like brain, if you think about like the person that's going to be consuming this marketing, it's very technical and probably very different than marketing for other, like say you're doing like consumer brands and like that. It's a totally different approach. So I was kind of interested in learning about like why does marketing for engineers differ from just like normal marketing, or I guess there's no such thing as normal marketing, but why is it different? Because like that's clearly what led you to start your own consulting firm, because you found a certain niche or found something that was very particular about this field. So just curious to
Exactly,
learn about
yeah.
that.
Yeah. So I think the key thing about marketing to engineers, and this probably applies to mechanical engineering and electrical engineering as well as electronics.
Mhm.
I think what I've called it is like the matryoshka approach. So if you look at a Russian doll, these matryoshkas, if
Mhm.
you talk to an engineer about what the problems are and what the challenges are, there'll be this list of things, and each one is a matryoshka doll. So it's like, oh, it's too complicated, it's too big, it's too heavy, it's too much power, it's too expensive, and so on and so on and so forth. And these are sort of the reasons that are given to you as to why a particular device or product or service won't match into their solution. But I think if you get down to the smallest matryoshka doll, what every engineer inside is really trying to do is try to protect their reputation. And if you understand that, I think then you are on the right course with technical marketing to engineers in probably any business. And the reason I say that was that one of the point at which I understood that to be the case was I was working as a technical trainer, and I was talking to this guy, and he said to me, "Oh, we're doing this project. We need a part for this. What would you recommend?" And I said, "Oh, well, why don't you go to this semiconductor vendor? I used to work there. I know they've got the parts. My company doesn't have those. That you won't find anything suitable for what you need." And he went, "Oh, no way!" He says, "No, I'm never going to touch anything from them again. We burnt our fingers once. We committed to using a particular part." And it was either a PowerPoint product or it came but it didn't meet the specifications that were promised. There was all these sort of problems, you see. And that's the point when it occurred to me. It's like these engineers, what they're trying to do all the time in the decision-making process, they might not even realize it themselves. But I think the core, at the very bottom of it, they don't want to be the one where everyone says, hey, this project's gone wrong because you committed us to
Right.
using that part. You committed us to using that software, that approach, whatever it might be. And I think reputation is a big underlying factor in technical decision making where the engineers are involved in choosing stuff.
It's really cool and like very interesting to like see how I like that image of the dolls, but also just like I think it's like something that you could apply to any marketing. So although it's so different, it's kind of just knowing exactly what your target audience is looking for, looking to accomplish, which in this case is to protect, their reputation. But you can apply that to any type of marketing or any campaign that you're doing. It's kind of and I think especially now too, like in the world of like so many options, like you kind of have to really understand what makes you different than everybody else and what's going to add value to your target audience's life. So I think that's really cool. And I love that imagery as well. Now, it's kind of like a secondary follow-up question is because we mentioned before you worked at Texas Instruments as a field application engineer, and then you also worked in technical sales engineer at Mill Corporation. So clearly like this passion for tech is something that's been really part of your life and part of your career as well. But in your opinion, do you believe that your hands-on experience with tech puts you ahead of other tech-oriented marketers in the field? And if so, why? And if not, do you think any marketer could tackle this field? So do you think, like, for example, I could dive into this and be a tech marketer and expert?
So I think anybody has the potential to move into marketing in this sphere. But I think what is critical is that you have a good wing person alongside you, somebody like myself, in order to guide you through the process. Because I think I think if you come from other industries and you say, oh, you know, we did, I was at one client once and they went, oh, we did this campaign and we spray painted messages on the pavement outside these shopping centres and things like this. Couldn't we do that? And you go, well, you obviously don't understand how engineers work, how they operate, where they're moving around, you know, and also the budgets that are involved, and that sort of thing in our industry. I mean, yeah, it'd be great to have some sort of campaign like that where you're going out and making everybody aware at bus stops and stuff. But you know, how many engineers congregate at a bus stop? So, and I think the other important thing is that at the end of the day, engineers are like, you know, I know myself, and I love information. I sit there and I'll absorb anything. When I was a kid, you know, I grew up in the UK. Maplin was a big distributor of components, and every year when the Maplin catalog came out, I went through all 650 pages of it. You know, and I knew every type of component. I knew what the package sizes were. I knew what all the tools were available. Obviously, I couldn't afford all of this stuff, but I had this encyclopedic knowledge of what you needed to be an engineer almost. And I think what we lack in technical marketing is obviously some of these B2C ideas, some of the more creative stuff, some of the more advanced ways of interacting and using analytics and all that sort of stuff. I think that's missing. But at the core, you still need to be, whatever your campaign is, you still need to have that very clear understanding of the engineering side, because you can do any campaign you want, but if the engineer at the end of the day doesn't know if you're 5 dB better than the competition, or that your package size is this small, or that, you know, you can support 110 amps where the competition is 100 amps, it absolutely meaningless, you know.
Right.
And I think one sort of, as a demonstrator of that, you've got two big distributors, US-based distributors. One's Mauser, and the other one's called DigiKey. And if you go to in one of our big industrial exhibitions in the past, the Mauser stand has been all with boards and staff and information about those boards and one thing or another. And if you went to the DigiKey stand, they had one-armed bandits, you know, sort of like pull the lever and play a game. And that's all they had. They just had these games. And yes, there were plenty of people there. It was a good branding exercise. I think, you know, there was really benefits out of doing it. They wouldn't have done it otherwise, I don't think. But year after year after year, they just kept turning up with these one-armed bandits competitions. You can win this, you can win the other. Right. But when those engineers then went back to the office, if they went to the Mauser website, they would have found this body of information which would have carried them on from their discussions at the stand. And I know DigiKey also has content on their website and that sort of thing, but it was less joined up in my opinion. And I just think that because also of my own experience of it, you look at the DigiKey stand, one-arm bandits, go, that's not serious. I'm actually here because I want to build something,
right?
And you're showing me nothing to do with what we're talking about. You know?
Exactly.
So, you know, I think that those are. I think, you know, if you understand the industry, you understand how people tick, how they make decisions, the personas that are around, then that makes a big difference. And so even if you're coming from other industries into it, I think there's a lot of work to be done. I think there's a lot of hard graft.
Understand.
But I think it's possible. And, you know, help understanding what being interested in technology in itself is obviously going to be a big help.
Yeah. And I think like one thing that kind of like popped to my mind when you were speaking about that was just like passion, the idea of like actually like being proud or interested in the product that you're working on and like trying to sell and trying to market. Like, I think that's a key because it makes your job a lot easier. So even like someone that wanted to get involved in your area of marketing with engineers, for example, maybe they're just someone that's curious and wants to learn, and kind of like what you're saying, like you were a little kid, like that curiosity could transfer into that kind of role as well. So
exactly,
I think like what you said, like you need to know what's going on in the industry, whether it be like through a wingman or woman, be like politically correct, but also like by having someone advising you. But a lot of it too comes from the drive that you have within. So I think that's really important.
The other key thing to remember is engineers rarely make good marketers, proper deep engineers. And the problem is that engineers are never finished with their products. Yeah, they're never complete. That's why you need a project manager. And they also know all the failures in their product. And so generally speaking, salespeople and marketing people tend to talk a little bit of a higher level. And then it's the responsibility of the applications team and who are customer support for other industries. They're there to then guide the customer through the hurdles as they tackle them, as they're trying to use your product, whether it's a chip, whether it's a piece of software, whatever it might be. It's like, well, actually that's not quite as far advanced as it is. There are limits. I mean, not everything is solved. Even if you buy a pair of shoes, that they might not be as comfortable as the last pair you bought,
right.
Although the person selling to you said, oh yeah, great, I really enjoy them.
Right.
So and the problem with engineers is they always throw up all these, but we haven't done that yet, and that's not really fully implemented yet, and we're not really quite sure if that's a voltage, because this, that, and the other. It's like, that's no good to a marketing person. They need to put something in front of people.
Right.
So that's a challenge bringing engineers on as marketing people.
I was going to say it seems difficult, to like kind of set goals that are going to be concrete goals, because if they're not finished, they don't like to finish things or always ongoing, then you can't do that in marketing. It has to be
they'll work until it's perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Which I mean, I hope engineers do that. Exactly. So it's a tough crowd to work with. Sure.
Yeah.
Now, we've talked a lot more about kind of like these bigger ideas of like what it takes to be a marketer in this area, and also like just like your journey. But I also wanted to know if you had, because we're obviously the content mix is about content marketing, and I wanted to know if you have an example of a campaign or a piece of content from your career that's worked really well for you, and kind of like maybe a highlight or kind of like the perfect piece of content for this area.
Yeah, so I think the piece of content that I'm most proud of is actually a paper brochure that I did 3 or 4 years ago with a client. So it's a European client, and they are well known for a particular type of electronics solution. And they also offer a customized building service for that as well. So you might find that what your needs aren't fully covered by what they have on the shelf. You need a customized version of that, or you need to fulfill some sort of special standards and things like this. And we sat down and talked about this. And again, it went back down to this understanding of engineers, is that engineers would prefer to obviously to resolve that problem in-house. They're engineers, they're problem solvers. They have the skills, they have the parts, they have the connections to make the boards and place all the parts on the boards and solder it and manufacture it. Why give it to somebody else, But the reality is that it's not their core competence. Their core competence might be let's say making ultrasound measurement solutions for medicine, for example, and this other piece that they need isn't their core competence. And so they know how it should work and they know what they need to do, but it's not their bread and butter. It's not what they do every day. So the likelihood is that part of the project, although it seems simple, is actually going to delay the whole thing because it never gets finished, and because they weren't aware of all the trouble and problems that could occur. So we talked through this, and said, like, I think the most important thing is really to sort of be open. Let's open up the entire process. So if I come to you for a custom solution, what's the process? What happens? How is this experience for the customer and his colleagues, his team, different to go into other people who offer the same service? Because there are competitors as well. So we laid all this out really carefully. We made a customer journey, and these are the steps. This is what you can experience along the journey. And obviously, their core product is also high quality, and they have all the standards in place for manufacturing and good logistics and second sourcing. So that is obviously a big benefit to somebody going to them, because you get that on top. So we sort of fleshed all of this out, and I said, well, what we need then is a brochure that puts this whole story together. So the brochure turns out to be a story. I got a chance to fly to the customer's location where the team was, and they were absolutely brilliant. So we went there and said, we need to do some photos, and we're going to do these photo shoots and show everybody working. And the point is that their pride was the key thing. When you do the photo shoot, the pride is what comes through in the photos, because they were so proud to be able to show me and participate in this activity. This is us on the phones, this is us winding this coil, this is us making a circuit board, this is our warehouse. The warehouse guy drove back and forth for about half an hour with a forklift truck to make sure we could get the right photos, and getting boxes off of high shelves and all this sort of thing. And that combined with the text I created and a graphic artist that I worked to put the whole thing together, turned out into just a fantastic piece of content. And that's gone to, I mean, I don't have numbers to say this is what came out of the program. But I do know that it moved things forward within the business, that the sales team were really happy to have this printed material, because in Germany, print is still a big thing. It's very considered to be valuable. And that has now been turned into a website. We've then gone on and we've augmented the customer journey with some videos that we did. So we did 2 languages of videos in German and English, where we intersperse that with video of the manufacturing site and the design site. So, it's a project that keeps growing, and that will now run ahead of me for the next 12 months. And we'll start to use LinkedIn to try and drive traffic to it. So that's been unbelievable, an unbelievable project. Yeah. And that's the sort of thing that you really want to do, that, lives and everybody who touches it is proud of it and enjoys it.
Yeah. And one thing I liked about this, the idea of this project is just it's a paper brochure, which I think it's back to basics, but it's kind of this old tricks still work. And I think that's really important, that I think a lot of times we're so caught up in the digital world and digital marketing. And it's no, but sometimes in certain cases, and I feel maybe engineers would like that. And you also said in Germany too, they prefer printed things. So you knew your audience well, so it kind of worked into that. But I also like how you mentioned when you went to the site to take the pictures, something like that, how everybody was enthusiastic. And I think that's so important in any marketing campaign that or if you have an idea or a piece of content you want to push, is having your team on board. Because that, you can have a great idea, but if people aren't into it, then it's going to be kind of not a good product in the end.
I think, that's the key thing that you just said there. If people aren't into it, and I've experienced that as well. So in Germany, especially, because that's where I've grown up and where I've worked for most of my life, that there's lots of small and medium-sized businesses, and a lot of those businesses in the engineering field are run by the original founders, and they're engineers themselves. And many of them don't believe in marketing. This is the problem. So it's very challenging sometimes to even do simple things, even changes to the website. It's almost impossible to push anything through. It's all decided by committee. Everybody wants a say. That. I mean, and I do mean everybody, almost down to the cleaner, is going to have a say in what goes in and how it looks. And unfortunately, you can't really run a project like that. You have to have somebody saying, right, this is the framework, this is what we've agreed, this is where we're going. If something's wrong or there's a mistake or whatever, that's fine. But it can get very messy, and so. Especially when you're trying to get engineering input from people as well. So I don't like this color, or I don't like that shape there, or that graphic. Oh, sorry, we did that 6 months ago. So
go back and change it.
That's done now. That's the corporate identity.
It's sorry about that. No, it's really fascinating to realize how many moving parts are in it, and how you need to have them all on board and all behind you.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to give you some space for a little plug, just to learn more about your company. But I'm also curious, because I always love when people are I have a great career, then I stopped everything and started something, a passion project or an entrepreneurial venture. So I'm curious. So in June 2020, which I can assume was a post-pandemic, product, right, of the pandemic, we had a lot of time in our hands. You started your own consultancy for marketers and needed support when it comes to reaching technical decision makers. So why did you pursue this? I think you tapped on it a bit before, but also how has the experience been? It is a risk, as I just mentioned. So how has it been?
Right. So yes, it is a risk. And I had also started my own business, about 8 years ago, and it was a complete disaster. It didn't go very well at all. So I'd learned from doing that. I knew the risks of being self-employed. But that's the first time I tried to form a company with a partner, and we had a product and a service and all sorts of bits and pieces on it. And this time it was only going to be me. So if it failed, it was my fault. And I'd become unhappy. Unfortunately, it was a constellation of things. I was unhappy with the directions that my career was going with my employer at the time. I sort of ended up being just a content creator, and that was all I was doing. And at the same time, I had, I was applying for some jobs. Some people saying, we'd like to employ you, but COVID, we can't really give you a job at the minute. It's all going to be delayed. So I knew I could get a job. And I also had some other people that I'd met through my network over the years, and they were coming to me and say, we'd like to work with you, but the sort of the company you're working for, the prices are too high. The manner in which they want to form a contract doesn't work for us. But we'd like to work for you. Can we find a way to do it? And I was very wary about just working for a single customer. I think it's part of my own personal persona. I could never, when I was an applications engineer in the field, I used to go to all these different companies, and it was great. One day I'd be doing a Bluetooth headset, the next week I'd be working on an oven, then I'd be working on the fridge panel,
cool.
then I'd be doing like a flow meter in a cellar somewhere. There'd be all these things, and a pacemaker thing, and all bits and pieces, and it was great. But I could never imagine working at that company for the 5 to 10 years it took to make that product. I need that broad base of things and plate spinning. I have to be careful because you can end up with too many plates. But I thrive on that broadness and that sort of tentacles in lots of things. And so being self-employed and I had 2 people come to me say, could you help us with marketing? And I had my old employer who said, we're happy to sort of continue to feed you as a freelancer with content pieces. So I was pretty sure that, I could make that work from a financial perspective. And it worked out. It was really good. So, and I mean, I have not stopped since I started. I've been continuously busy. Income has been there all throughout the pandemic as well. I mean, it couldn't be better. And people, I get excellent feedback as well. Really, it's lovely to hear what people say about the things I write and produce. I've become also a freelance journalist for Elector, which is a big hobby and industry magazine in our space, and well known. It's celebrating its 60th anniversary at the minute, so we're doing lots of pieces about the last 60 years, and so that's a great opportunity to go back and look at what each decade brought us, and the technology, how it came about. Why do we have these tiny chips with enormous amount of processing power in our mobile phones today? Where did that all start? And so on and so forth. Why has the internet come about? Why do we use HTML? All these sort of things. So it's been a lot of fun, and it's also allowed me to branch out into and try things that I hadn't done before. So I did a marketing podcast or webcast with a friend of mine, which is why my video setup is hopefully acceptable today. I've started doing interviews on LinkedIn as well. I've started doing a show which we call Through the Cable Roll. It's like through the keyhole, but for technology. But we go through a roll of cable, and I'm trying to sort of build that up as well. We went to the IEA Mobility exhibition and sort of looked at some of the technology that's on display there around mobility and electric vehicles, electric powertrains. And I've also then been using those videos to promote some of the articles I've written for Elector over the last few months. And I think the important thing is that the other clients benefit from that as well, because all of these areas where I'm involved, if they come to me and say, oh, we want to do this, or we're looking at that, my background and knowledge is there in that space, and we can do it because we've tried it and we've had the opportunity.
That's so great. And I mean, one thing is like taking risk pays off. I want everyone that's listening to take, because clearly you started your own business and it failed, and you still decided to do it again. So that's great. And I also just love like thinking about when you were talking in the beginning of the interview with like the magazine as a kid and that curious mind, and talking about how you work better. Like, it's just like kind of knowing you're like, even as a child, you were the same way of just like, I like to learn about many things and be involved. I just can't have a monotonous job. So I think it's really cool that you kind of took that and started your own thing to kind of better suit your lifestyle and kind of who you are as a person. So I love that. Now, I'm just curious because, you said you have a lot of things going on, you have a lot of plates, but kind of what is your daily life like in this business as a consultant and as a content creator?
I have 2 clients who I work with as in the marketing consultancy role permanently, and I have a few other people sort of who help out on an ad hoc basis. So a week involves pushing those projects forward that we're doing, and the campaigns forward that we're doing with those fixed clients. Then I've got the journalistic side. So there's always a raft of material to be created, and there's a raft of material to be edited for the magazines and for the online presence as well. And otherwise, it's handling other ad hoc content requests. So, content requests come in. Sometimes those are very well prepared. There's a brief. If it's on a topic I know, that makes it obviously easier because you can sort of build on stuff, and you get very good at researching on Google and finding the right material and finding good sources of information and background. Others are not so well prepared, and I might be involved in doing some interviews with some clients and their teams of engineers, really to get down to the nuts and bolts of what makes up their solution, why is it good, how does it help, what's the USP, all those sort of things. So every week is different. This week, for example, the Electron magazine, they are running a Fast Forward Award for startups, which will show the winner at the Productronica exhibition in November here in Munich. And we went to visit one of the sponsors and do a video interview with them and talk to them. And, we were there for maybe 2 hours. We got all the material done in German and in English. And now we've got this video material that will be turned into a text-based material for the website and so on and so forth. So 1 week video, the next week just hacking away at the keyboard, trying to get as many words in as you can.
That's what you like, is to have something different and have excitement. You don't never know what week's going to bring. Now, for time's sake, I'm going to push a bit forward to like the end of our interview, which is usually like advice and recommendations.
Yes.
Now, I want to know, like, what advice we touched upon this before about kind of, can like any marketer get involved in tech marketing, or like if someone was interested in this field, kind of, I want to know what advice you'd give to somebody who's looking to start out in tech marketing.
Yeah. So I think if let's assume that you're already doing some sort of marketing, or the interest is there and you've got a handle for what marketing is and what it means. There's a couple of books that I can recommend, which I've brought with me. So for technical people, for technical marketing roles, there's two ladies here. There's Rebecca Geyer, who wrote the book Smart Marketing for Engineers. Cool. And there's her colleague as well. That's...
Good title, content marketing.
Sorry, Wendy Covey. So content marketing engineered. Now, both of these are excellent texts to read through to get, I would say, a good gauge on sort of the key things that need to be done as a technical marketer, and also to address that engineering audience. So you've got things in here about creating personas, developing marketing plans, design of the website, content plans. There's also that's in the Smart Marketing book. In the content marketing engineered, it's obviously a bit more content created. One of the great things in here that you can take away is developing the mission and vision plan, and also creating positioning statements and things like that. And if you don't have those, it makes it very, very difficult to, I think, develop your marketing plan anyway. If you're going to be involved in a small to medium-sized business and you're going to be the marketing person, you really need, it's very highly likely that you'll need to work with some partners to do this job. You won't be able to do it on your own, because you won't be able to create the content. You won't be able to update the website and all these things on your own. So I think mission, vision, and positioning, as they're sort of described in here and using other resources on the web that you'll find, are essential, because if you nail that down, you've got this thing that you can go to other people with and say, this is our mission, this is our vision, this is our corporate identity, just an A4 piece of paper if you want, corporate design. And people, those people trying to help you have 1,000 questions already answered by having that. So I think that is essential. The other good books that I wanted to note are Everybody Writes by Anne Hadley. I think anyone who wants to get into writing at all should go through this. I just quote one of the things. One of the good things in here is the embrace the ugly first draft. I think if you're struggling to write anything, just get anything down. And then also her quote from Chekhov, show, don't tell. So he says, don't tell me the moon is shining. Show me the glint of the moon on broken glass. And that's the difference, I think, between an article written by an engineer and an article written by someone who's a bit more creative, a bit more content creator who has engineering experience. You can learn a lot from that. One of the other things, one of my jobs was technical training. And in that job, I love this particular book, as you can see, because I've got so many notes. It's called Developing Technical Training by a lady called Ruth Colvin Clark. It's a bit dated, and if you get to the second, the final third of the book, it's about online learning, and everything's changed completely. So that's almost irrelevant now. But I think the key thing in here, and I'm just going to share this because this is probably the most important thing, is understanding what they call the content performance matrix. That's I'm just going to sort of show that bit there.
Yeah.
Now, it's the understanding of there's a difference between facts, concepts, processes, procedures, and principles. And I think when we're trying to sell technical products, you need to pick people up, and you need to sort of give them sort of like a structure, like a framework upon which they can hang your knowledge and where they can find their place. Yeah, so it's a 5-volt part, so that's a fact. Yeah, but if you then need to put a chip on a board, there's a process associated with that. Or if working in a particular manner can be written down, it's probably a principle. There's sort of guidelines you want to put in place. So those are really good things.
Yes, I shouldn't have been surprised that someone that likes to learn would recommend great books. So it seems like you came with the books. So for those listening, check out the video.
Amazingly, I found them. I think also the other important thing, I'm independent. I'm a solo freelancer. I don't really have any intention in turning this into a business of many, many people at the minute. And I think when you're a solopreneur, as they call them, it makes sense to try and grasp as many tools as you can to simplify your life. So my job is consulting, it's writing. I'm not interested really obviously I'm interested in the finances. I want to bank balance at the end of the month. I'm not interested in sending out all the invoices and checking everything.
Right.
So here in Germany, at least, we have a company called LexOffice, and who's coupled up with a bank called Contist. And that's been absolutely brilliant. You can put all your data in, it sends off all your invoices, you can create offers. Because it's linked to your bank account, as soon as an invoice gets paid, it all gets wrapped up. My tax advisor, he can log into it as well from the back end, as it were, and he can correct anything. He pulls everything out he needs for VAT and all that sort of stuff. So that is absolutely brilliant. Another time saver is Calendly. I think you use that as well.
I have, yeah.
Yeah. So, don't waste time trying to find an appointment. Just say, look in there, choose something. Yeah, so that's quite good.
Yeah.
The other one I use a lot is Toggle. It's a time tracking tool, which is invaluable if you're trying to charge people by the hour. So I at the end of the month, I just open Toggle and say, right, I spent these amount of hours on this project, these numbers of hours on that project. And also with, I don't know how it is in other parts of the world, but at least for me and in Europe, we charge for content by the word. So it also helps with time tracking to see how much money am I earning per word? Essentially, am I on par with my hourly rate or not? Do I need to be more efficient?
Exactly.
So those are the good things. Recently, with the video stuff, has been quite interesting. There's amazing how many online video tools there are for editing.
Right.
There's a new one. I thought it was called Capwing, but then I went to watch their videos, and it's called Kapwing. So Kapwing is great. It's a great video editing tool, and the thing that I use it mostly for is put subtitles on videos. So they've got an AI tool for getting the words out. It's not perfect, but it's better to have a starting point. And then tweak that. So that was absolutely brilliant. There's another one called Headliner as well, which I used a bit. And I think other than that, that's sort of Grammarly, DeepL for translation. I only write in English, but I prepare some text using DeepL in German, so people have got something else to start on as a basis.
I have some.
My German's good enough for talking to people and things, but it's not really good enough for content writing, I think, to be published. So so there we go.
That's awesome, and very thorough list. I think a lot of people are going to benefit. I love that.
It's
always good. I think the more tools and the more books and recommendations we have, the better, for sure.
Yeah.
Now we're coming to the end. Well, we've come to the end, I guess, of the interview. It's been really, really interesting to learn more kind of your career journey, how one thing has led to the next, and how you're a solo entrepreneuring and kind of just doing what makes you happy. And I think that's really for me, a big takeaway from this. interview. And I was just wondering, though, in your opinion, what's a big takeaway, like a takeaway from this interview, or a piece of parting advice that you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah, I think I think if you're struggling in a small to medium sized business, the key thing is really to sit down and prepare an explanation of your business. I would say sort of mission, vision, and positioning statements. If you can
Mm,
get those sort of things together, and then go out there and make use of all the freelance resources that are out there. There's some great graphic artists that I work with. There's great other marketing people that I'm in contact with. Myself as a writer and others, of course. If you
mm,
can put all those things together, you make your life much easier, and I think you make the life of the people you work with much easier.
mm.
And I think that's sort of the key to having a successful campaign and making your life easier as the one man marketing person in a small to medium sized business.
Yeah, just use your resources and find them and know
Yeah,
when to use them, how to use them, and who's the
exactly.
right
Yeah,
person to hire.
yeah,
That's awesome. Now, if people wanted to like get in touch with you, maybe ask you some questions about how you did everything, like started your own business or anything about tech marketing, is LinkedIn the best way to get in touch, or is there other ways as well?
for sure. LinkedIn is definitely the easiest way to get in touch because obviously most people are business people, professionals are on there.
Mm.
Alternatively, just type my name into Google. I'm almost a Google whack. I think I think there's one Stuart Cording in Australia that played in a
Mhm.
local cricket team. All the other ones are me. So
Yeah, so that's all you. So we just do
you'll
a quick
find me.
Google search. I feel like there's not many Kyler Canastras, so I feel you on that. Well, thank you so much, Stuart, for your everything, for your insights, your story, for everything was really helpful, and I think a lot of our listeners are going to enjoy it.
Thank you
And
as well. From my
yeah,
side, it's been brilliant. I really enjoyed the chat and the questions are really insightful questions, and they've taken time for me to sort of sit back and think, oh, you can think about what I would answer, So it's been really good.
yeah, and I'm glad it made you reflect a bit because you should be like happy and with the career you've had so far. So I'm glad that we did
Thank
that.
you.
And I also want to thank our audience for tuning in. As always, for more perspectives on the content marketing industry in Europe, check out veracontent.com/mix and keep tuning to the podcast for more interviews with content experts like Stuart. So we'll see you all next time. Thanks again.